You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold. Today we welcome in Shivani Honwad, attorney, entrepreneur, and creative philanthropist in LA. How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Good. Thanks for coming in and joining us.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and congrats. Like we met up at the CRISP Summit in Atlanta, which was an epic experience. And we gave out business cards, and we had some people to get the full Lawyer Stories podcast package. And Shivani is the recipient, and we couldn't be more pleased with having you on the show. So, welcome in, and you have a lot going on. You do a lot of really cool things. So,
thank you.
Yeah, for sure. So, first, just start generally. Where were you born and raised?
So I grew up on the East Coast of the U.S. I was born in the U.S., but I'm a first generation. My parents are immigrants from India.
Okay.
So I grew up in Pennsylvania and then went to undergrad in New York and law school in D.C. But mostly spent most of my life on the East Coast until I moved to L.A. in my 30s.
Nice. So how did you end up in L.A.?
No, it was really funny. So actually, when I was little, I had cousins that lived in LA. And there's this picture of me when I was 3 years old, wearing all my Disneyland gear, of course.
Nice.
And just refusing to go to the airport. And I just told my parents and my brother that I was like, fine, you guys go on the plane, go back to Pennsylvania. I'm staying in LA. And so LA was just somewhere that I always wanted to live.
Wait. So did they leave you there as a kid?
No.
They all went and you just started your career there in LA? Okay,
no,
sorry. We should make
3.
the assumption that you actually went back. Okay, go ahead.
I was 3, but my mom always laughed at that picture, and she was like, you were just ready to stay there. You didn't care about us. You were just like, no, this is just where I'm going to live now.
Probably because of Disneyland, though, I'm guessing, right?
I mean, maybe, but
okay,
who knows? Maybe the palm trees. I don't know.
That's
sun.
Yeah, well, I hear that. I mean, as a Northeastern person, I'm definitely a Northeast guy, but when I get out to down in that nice weather, it's definitely difficult to think about coming back to snow, especially if it's in the winter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't know. I wasn't always a big cold person, but yeah, so I just always wanted to go out there and just, life situations just didn't work out. And then I had the opportunity to do so. And so I did in my 30s, and then took the California bar way later. Then I took the New York bar, but sucked it up and did it and passed. And so now I'm barred in both New York and California.
Those are two amazing states to be barred in too. You could do a lot of stuff, a lot of opportunity. But Shivani, I'm curious, it looks like you went to business school, right? Before you went to law school. Is that correct? And then, so what was the moment you said, I'm going to go to law school now?
So, as a child of Indian immigrant parents, my whole life, I thought I wanted to be a doctor, and that was ingrained in me. And then, I wanted to be actually an orthopedic surgeon, so I can still name all your bones and muscles in your body.
Wow.
But, I was volunteering at the hospital in senior year. I just remember there was just a point, I was in the orthopedic ward, and there was just a bunch of patients that basically just had really tough injuries, and they were going to have to live with a lot of pain, or just have to give up a lot.
Yep.
And I was like, I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, where I have to tell people this is as good as it gets.
Oh, yeah.
And I just, came home and I was like, no, there's nothing, I can't, sit with that and have that be the rest of my life.
Wow.
So of course my parents freaked out and were like, what do you mean
Right.
you're not going to be a doctor? But so my father convinced me to go to business school, for undergrad at least. And so I applied, And NYU actually gave me a nice scholarship to go to the Stern Business School there for undergrad. So I did that and I loved it. And I had a great time. And then, but I was still a little bit directionless because I hadn't thought of business school before that.
Okay.
So I went, we have relatives and friends and people that work in Bollywood in India. And so I did an internship in the summer between my freshman and sophomore year in Bollywood.
Right. So that was I won't say the year. I don't know if you mind like saying the year. I mean, I graduated law school in like '06, so I'll just say like around that time. That was actually like my next question. Like you were in business school, NYU, and you had like a really interesting experience, right, in Bollywood. So I guess I didn't really like need to introduce the experience because you were going there anyway, but I just kind of felt the need to.
Yeah, I mean, that's really the pivotal moment. So, for me, I was 19 at the time and naive young American girl, quite frankly. And I ended up getting stuck in this monsoon flood. And, I'm going to say the date because you can actually Google the date.
Yeah.
And it set a world record for how much rain fell on the city of Mumbai in India.
Wow.
So it was July 26, 2005, because a cloud burst over the city. So it was like the first big flooding. And so I'm stuck in that floodwater for like 14 hours. That story is better told like at a bar over a drink. Like it's a long ordeal of everything that happened that day.
Well, let's just say this episode's being recorded in the morning. So we thought it would be better not to, break up easy, but I will believe you that was.
So yeah, it was just an ordeal. And, I ended up really sick after that. And I ended up actually stranded. I was living with my grandparents that summer. I never made it to their house that night or the next day. I actually was stranded at my uncle's place for about a week. Wow. And that's kind of where I learned all about human trafficking, because so many of the slums had washed away. Like there were children on the streets, like laying next to dead parents. Like it was just absolute chaos. And I just never seen anything like that before. So that's kind of that moment for me where I kind of started looking into all of this, and I wanted to go to law school to work on human rights issues.
Yeah. That's wow. So you literally saw that on the street, like when everything cleared away?
Yeah, it was crazy. Like, and I mean, I saw it during the day too. Like, unfortunately, one of the things we passed by was water had gone into a school and a bunch of the children had drowned. So they were carrying out the bodies of the young kids, and it was horrible. Like it was really sad. Everything that you saw was just, again, like I had this American perspective because I grew up in the States, even if am Indian. I just hadn't been exposed to that side of things of the world. I feel like I led a pretty sheltered life in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And I just hadn't seen anything like this. And again, this is before Katrina happened in the US. I mean, it's slightly before, but it's still colored my mind and how I viewed the world. And this was just the first time I had seen anything like this. And people were just like, yeah, this is just what happens. And I just couldn't believe that, children were left so helpless.
That's so sad. So you go to law school, you wanted to work on human rights issues, perhaps like human trafficking, helping with those issues. What was your first job at a law school?
So my first job was I clerked for the chief judge of the Family Court of Delaware.
Okay.
It was one of the best decisions I made. My first job offer was actually at the Miami State's Attorney's Office.
Wow.
And I took the clerkship instead, and I'm so glad I did. And it's so funny. I talked to the judge I worked for all the time. Her and her husband now refer to me as their third daughter.
Nice.
So we're still really close, and it was an incredible experience.
That's awesome. So like after you're working for someone else or, working for a judge, like how do you know when it's time to launch your own firm, law office of or Shivani Law? Like how does the law office of Shivani Honwad, LLC. So how do you know when it's time for you to go out on your own?
So it's the law firm of Shivani Honwad, and the Shivani Law joke that we were talking about earlier was everyone thinks my last name is Howard. Gotcha. And so that's why I did everything under Shivani Law instead of Honwad, right, because people would just mistype it. But I didn't start my law firm right away. I actually, because I had passed the New York bar, so after the clerkship, I went to New York. I worked at the Legal Aid Society for a hot second. I worked at a private firm, and it just got to a point where, like, I felt the drudgery of the criminal justice system. Like, there's just a lot of issues with our system, and it was really frustrating for me. And I was in my 20s and in New York and going to a lot of parties in New York.
Nice.
And I was often the only lawyer at a lot of these parties, and people, like a lot of models, kept coming up to me and asking me for help. They're like, "Hey, I heard you're a lawyer. Can you help me?"
Huh.
And it was kind of like, with what? Like, were you arrested? Because, like, that's what I did at the time. Like, I was a criminal defense attorney, and I was basically arguing cases daily in the Bronx courthouse.
Is that what you were doing for legal aid too in New York?
In legal aid, I worked in the immigration unit, so I was doing a lot of the special immigrant juvenile status cases.
Gotcha.
So it was the kids' cases.
All right.
And so, I kept hearing about this, and I just had no idea, like, what. I really didn't know a lot about the fashion industry at all. And, just these models kept coming at to me, asking me for help. And so I finally kind of realized it was like a huge issue where models were they were being forced to work without pay for extended periods of time. If they were immigrants into the country, their passports and documentation were being withheld. They were being threatened. There was just a lot of abuse in the industry. And so I think it just got to a point where, like, I was like, wow, I need to do something about this. And so I found an attorney that was actually a graduate of my law school. And I was like, I'll bring you work. Can you train me? And I worked it out with my law firm, that there was no conflicts or anything. So this is what I spent nights and weekends learning how to do. And then, I just reached the tipping point where it was like, a lot of people kind of pushed me. They're like, the hardest part of running a law firm is getting clients. Like, you have a ton of clients. Like, you have a ton of people that want to work for you. Just try it. And my dad made the comment to me too. I was in my late 20s at that point, and he was like, "You're not married. You don't have a kid. Like, if you fail in a year, go get a job. Like, who cares? Try it."
It's true.
And so here I am, 8.5 almost years later, still doing it.
Nice. That's amazing. What advice can you give somebody who wants to launch their own firm?
I think there's two things that I learned. If you're okay with me sharing two.
Of course. Share 3. Yes.
Okay. So one is, I was entering, at the time at least, like now, I think the advent of TikTok and the influencer culture is a lot larger. So it's a little bit different. But at the time, like, who my clientele was, it was just very different. Like, fashion law was a very niche field. And I think all the fashion lawyers, we all knew each other at the time. And so I was starting out my law firm and, like, creating a website, building a brand, and doing all of these things. And I had a lot of other attorneys and my colleagues from the bar associations just kind of telling me, they're like, you don't come off as very serious. Like, your website looks kind of like a creative agency. And I was like, great, that's what I'm going for. So my clients loved my website and, loved my branding, but other attorneys didn't. And it was kind of one of those moments where I had to be like, well, I don't really care what other attorneys think. I care what potential clients think, because that's who's going to pay me to work with.
Right.
So you kind of have to pick what makes you happy and, like, what you feel comfortable with. And people are always going to criticize you, like, either way. Like, you're always going to get commentary, especially when you're starting something new, like, whatever that is. And I think you just have to kind of believe in yourself. And if for some reason you don't believe in yourself, surround yourself with people that believe in you. That has been the best thing that I think I've done, is just so many people just kept pushing me along and, like, don't worry about them, just keep doing you. And it's kind of funny because a lot of the people that were so critical early on, now after COVID, and during COVID, they, like, reached out to me for advice on how to start a law firm.
Wow. It's amazing.
So
people were basically projecting onto you, like, their insecurity about starting a law firm. I mean, if you think about it, it's hard to dig through that sometimes, especially if you're somebody who isn't, like you said, like 100% sure in themselves. It could be anybody. And then they have somebody else telling them, oh, don't do this. And now they're looking at you for advice, right?
Exactly. So that was, I think that's the biggest thing, is just, if you're starting you need to figure out what works for you and just own it and run with it and stop worrying so much about everyone else.
Yeah. Nobody cares. It's crazy.
No, like it's just, yeah, like as you get older too, you just realize like everyone's so engrossed in their own stuff. They'll make comments to you, but they don't really care and they'll forget what they said to you.
Yeah, yeah, it's so it's so. I think some people think that people are like thinking about them way more than they are. They might
No,
say like, right? I mean, they might say a comment to them, and then that person who's the recipient of the comment might sit there and dwell on it, but that other person, like, they don't even care. They're not gonna sit there thinking about you. Like, nobody really care. I mean, I hate to say it, but I think like that's
it's
unless it's
true.
really close friends or family who are really invested, like you shouldn't really you have to try your best to like fight that off and not really let that bother you.
Yeah. And again, it's easier said than done, but
Totally.
it's really, I think as you get older, you just realize you're like, everyone's too busy with their own stuff. They really don't care.
Totally. No, and I think that that's totally fine. So tell
I'm
us.
sorry, I had one more quick piece of
Oh
advice
yeah,
to share.
go
That
ahead,
was okay.
please.
Because this is, I think, was my game changer once I did this. And a lot of my clients are entrepreneurs.
Yep.
And so I tell them to do this all the time. But it's block scheduling.
Okay. Yep.
And what that means is like you set, like when you're an entrepreneur, your day is like what you make it.
Right.
And so it's not like you're like, oh, I have to be in the office by 9 and leave by 5. Like that's not your day. Like your day, like you have all these other things you have to do, and your to-do list is always growing rather than shrinking. And so block scheduling is really big in terms of like you set your days of the week. So as a lawyer, like I schedule initial consultations on 2 days of the week only. And like there's very few exceptions where like if it has to be or it's a rush or something like that, like I might make an exception.
Okay.
But overall, like I know like, okay, these 2 days of the week are my initial consultation days. But then I have like one full day of my week is my writing day. Because when
Okay.
you go to
Right.
write like briefs or like edit contracts or do that stuff, you can't just look at things for 5-10 minutes and pick up and like drop it off again. Like
Right.
you want dedicated time to like properly think about things and edit and draft, you know? So, and then you need to do admin. Like if you're running your own firm, even if you have stuff outsourced to people, you still need to figure out like, are your invoices paid? Like, who do you need to be billing? Oh, what other expenses do you have? Is there something you can cut? Is there something you want to like adopt? So you need dedicated time to review all of that too.
Yep.
So I have dedicated chunks of time for each of these things on my weekly schedule.
That's great. I think that's really good advice, actually, especially helping somebody get organized at first. You know, so that's good. I think it kind of goes along with I talk a lot, well, sometimes with other guests about systems, like having systems in place
Mm-hmm.
to help you. So I think that's sort of along the same line. But I think dedicated chunks of time, like Shivani's telling us, is like super important. So thank you for that advice.
Yeah, of course. Like I said, I think once I did that, it like really changed my life. And like for my clients too, they're like, oh, I can do that. Tuesdays can be my filming day or something.
Right. Yeah, totally. Um, so like tell us about your firm a little bit. Immigration, business law for companies, and fashion tech and entertainment. Is that
Yeah.
accurate? I looked at your LinkedIn. I think that's why I might have botched something.
Yeah. So most of my clients are models, designers, just creatives. Most of them are female.
Okay.
Um, all of my clients right now are word of mouth referral only. So
Wow.
either you have to know me or I've been referred by one of my current or past clients.
Okay.
So I don't do any marketing. And I think what that leads to is just a better, healthier relationship dynamic. It leads to a certain level of respect. Like I'm not getting calls at 3 o'clock in the morning anymore.
Right.
Like, hey, did
Anymore.
you read this or help me? Yeah, anymore. I mean, when you start a firm, you take whatever.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure.
And then, like they come in vetted, they know my rates, they know how I operate. It's just a healthier dynamic. But I mean, I really love what I do. I think my clients are working on such interesting things. And yeah, so I do immigration. So it's business immigration.
Mhm.
So people will come to me like, oh, my so and so got arrested. And I'm like, I don't know what to do with that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
So I don't do any deportation defense. So I'm basically working with like highly skilled individuals, like whether that's talent or people like with certain skill sets in the tech world that are trying to work in the US. So like models coming in for Fashion Week,
Okay.
tech workers with jobs in Silicon Valley or, New
Wow.
York or
Amazing.
whatever. So things like that. And then like I also file like trademarks,
Okay.
and things of that sort for like brand protection, as a lot of my clients, as they're entrepreneurs as well, are building brands.
Okay.
And then most of my days, I would say, would be contract negotiations.
Nice. So that's got to be something like hard to get in. I mean, I think it sounds awesome. Like you're working with models and like creatives, and like it's got to be pretty hard to like break into for people, because people want to. If some people, when they become a lawyer, like they want to do something like pretty cool. I mean, I feel like you've definitely hammered that on the head. So like it's got to be kind of hard for people to break into that, would you say? Or like do you have any advice for somebody who wants to get into representing creatives or models?
Um, okay, so my answer might be a little bit terrible for this, but I fell into this. It was
Yeah,
not planned at all.
that's fine.
I mean, I think if you had told me in law school that I was working in fashion law and going to New York Fashion Week, I would have laughed in your face and been like,
Yeah, that's okay.
but so my advice for that though would just be go where your clients are. So like when I was networking and going to events, like, other people would go to like lawyer events. Well, I went to Fashion Week. Like
Right.
I went to all these parties where all these models have been, approaching me. Like I just kept going to them and being like, hey, I can help you now. So my
Right.
advice is one, also in this industry, because there's so much distrust,
Mm,
I think the reason my business is thriving right now is also because of the word of mouth referrals. And I think it has to do with just being kind to your clients.
nice.
I know that sounds really basic, but that's the first thing so many people say to me. They're like, are you really a lawyer? But you're so nice.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why would I be mean to you? You're coming to me for help.
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I think it's twofold in that one, there's a stigma about lawyers that I'm not
Right.
saying, obviously, like a lot of my friends are lawyers. Like, I think there's just this negative stigma that lawyers are scary or lawyers are mean or belittling. And so a lot of people are just really nervous to approach lawyers. So I think if you can position yourself in a way to come across, whether it's you hold a workshop and, just show that you're a nice lawyer, I think that can be a way to draw some people in. But I think the biggest way is just really going to where potential clients are, like just getting a niche in that field. Has just been me being at parties and just not even trying to pick up clients, just being like, when people ask what you do, just talking about it. And like people will always be like, oh my God, I need this. And so there are ways to do it. Like it's covert marketing, I guess.
Mhm.
But you want to be like discreet about it. You don't want to be in someone's face like, I'm the celebrity lawyer for everyone, because
Yeah.
that's a turn for a lot of people.
Right. Right. That's interesting. I don't think it's weird that you fell into it at all. I actually think like some that happens to people. My full-time job, I totally fell into it, and I like it. So it's kind of that's in lawyer stories. I fell it kind of the way it's kind of gone. It just sort of fell into that as well. Well, I also built it, but anyway, I get what you're like. I get what you're saying. I don't think that that's weird at all, and I think like a lot of it's accurate. I mean, some people might, if they're going through like a divorce, or if they're going through like they have a personal injury and they need to like sue a insurance company, they might want that like bulldog lawyer. But I think in your case, like I think it sounds like a great approach that you take with your clients. Being like the nice lawyer and being receptive. I mean, why would you ever, I guess, be any way else with them, right? So, what's like some of the best advice you've received throughout your career?
So I think one of the best pieces of advice came from the judge I clerked for. And she told me that it doesn't matter what you say, it's what other people hear.
Mm,
And I think that's really, something for us as lawyers to be cognizant of, is that if you're explaining a really complex matter to a client that's nervous or scared about something, and you do it in such a way that can give them like more anxiety, you're not doing a good job.
yeah, yeah,
Like our job as lawyers is to like present solutions, but also break down complex problems into a way that is easy to digest for the client.
right,
And so I think that was like one of my biggest things where, she said it to me in a context where I think I just answered something very directly and like, oh, well, the statute says this. And my response, although in theory was correct, it had really upset someone. And it had really upset like a young juvenile that we were kind of working with in the court system. And I didn't mean for it to be upsetting. He asked me a question and I answered it just, oh, the statute says this. But apparently he was negatively impacted by that statute if you did a very clear reading of it.
Okay.
And so I went back and I talked to him about it and like we figured it out. And like then when I explained it further and asked him more questions and understood the situation, he wasn't as impacted by it as he had thought. So like he had options.
Right.
But I think, you know, she had told me that at that time. She's like, you have to think about it of like, you know, how is this other person going to hear it? Like, what are their circumstances?
Yeah.
Kind of like when you're giving an answer as an attorney, not, you know, everyday life, like you need to always think of someone else, but like you kind of do a little bit. But just what is that person like, you know, in what context are they hearing what you're giving them?
Right.
So I think it breeds a lot of empathy to when you think of things that way.
Yeah. Makes total sense. I really like that. So how about now? Like, what are you working on that you're most excited about?
A couple things. So I have 2 books that I'm in the middle of working on.
Wow.
One's on negotiation strategies, which I'm excited about.
Nice.
Because I'm actually going to be teaching at NYU's Los Angeles campus.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm really excited. I'm teaching undergrads.
It's amazing.
Basically entrepreneurship and negotiation strategies.
Yep.
And so these are mainly creatives who are coming from the New York campus to LA for the semester. So they want to enter the entertainment industry. So it's kind of people who would be my future clients, I guess. I get to kind of get them early on and train them.
Perfect. Yeah. That's great.
And then you, Benny, after we met at the conference, inspired me to start the podcast that I wanted to start around the empathy platform that I've been building. So hopefully that's launching soon too.
That's great. I think that's amazing. Fully supported. What's the empathy platform?
I just, so I lost my mom a couple years ago to cancer. And, you know, I was one of the first people in all my friend groups to lose a parent.
Yeah.
And it was really hard. Like I had to go seek support essentially from different people in other friend groups because I really didn't have it in my close circles.
Yeah.
And it kind of spawned this idea of creating something where, you know, we all go through hard times in our life, whether that's a bad breakup, a job loss, relocation that's hard, grief of some sort, loss of a parent, sibling, partner, what have you. And I think unless you've specifically been there in that situation, if you're watching someone you love go through that hard time, it's sometimes hard to be there for them.
Yeah.
Like in the way that they need it. Let me put it that way. And so I've, you know, been kicking around this idea for a while and just really want to build it out of creating something where, you know, we share stories of people and the hard times they've been through. So if it's you or if it's someone you love, you can get ideas of either how to support them or what might be helpful as you kind of navigate this new stage.
I love it. And I can't wait to see that grow. And I definitely support it. And, you know, I'm looking forward to seeing your book too. Do you think I can get like an autographed copy at some point?
Maybe we might be able to work on that for you.
Maybe. Yeah. Hey, look, I don't ask for too much. All right. That's so cool.
I'm sure I can ship that, you know, to Massachusetts.
Great. So it is Thanksgiving weekend. So like, what's going on now that you're like most grateful for or thankful for? Anything that you'd like to share?
I would say my support system.
Good.
And, you know, I think I touched on that earlier, just getting people around you that believe in you. And, you know, for me, like getting through law school was hard. Passing the bar was hard twice, like New York and California.
Yeah.
Starting a law firm was hard. Like, I was still a younger lawyer when I started. I wasn't, you know, in my 50s starting a firm. I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
And then like everything with my mom when she was diagnosed with cancer, when she passed away, all of that was hard. And I think I've just had so many incredible friends. Like some of my best friends are my best friends from elementary school, like kindergarten, first grade. Like they're still the people I talk to almost every day.
That's great. That's the best. Those friendships are priceless. I mean, I have friends, the same too. I mean, the best thing is like they know like so much about you and like everything you've been through, every stage. So that's incredible that you still have those people in your life.
It's like what you just said. You don't have to explain anything because
Right.
they've just done life with you.
Right. That's exactly.
So like,
yeah.
People can have like, they look at you or they see your resume, your website or something, and they make assumptions about you, or that they think you're going to be a certain way. And then it's like, you call your best friend, you're like, no, that's not true. And it's like, okay, this person has known me for 5 minutes and looked at my website versus this person that's known me for 30 years. Yeah, I'm going to believe the person that's known me for 30 years.
Yeah, sure.
So I think all of that is like what I'm so grateful for, is just to have such incredible family and friends around me that I'm close to.
Yep.
I know not everyone has that luxury of, having a family that can be supportive, or even friends that can really be supportive. And I just think the amount of things that my friends have done for me, and my family, and just, it's been incredible. And that's also an impetus for the empathy platform, is sharing some of the stories there.
Yeah.
Because I think I've been shown such incredible acts of kindness and support. And I would love to pass that on to like kind of show other people just also how to be a better friend or family member to others.
Sure. So is the platform on like a certain network, or like when you talk about a platform specifically, like what?
Being built.
It's being built. Okay. All right. It's being built. Good. It's in the works.
It's in the works.
So another like really important thing you do that I want to ask you about is your involvement in advocacy. I think we touched on it earlier, but like your involvement in advocacy and human trafficking, and like you've worked with a couple groups, NOMI and GEMS. Like, can you like explain to us like just your advocacy and how that all works?
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Did I disappear?
No, you're back.
I was on the Young Professionals Board for the NOMI Network, which is an incredible organization that supports survivors of human trafficking. For anyone in New York, you should go check them out at the holiday market in December.
Okay.
And then GEMS as well. GEMS is an incredible organization that was founded by Rachel Lloyd that works with survivors as well. So, when I went to law school, dealt with human trafficking. So I think this was my way to kind of get back in that way of like being able to do what I do, but also still having a foot in the door with human rights issues. And so I was on the boards of both of them, but like, I also, what happened in the fashion industry too is like, my clients and I actually worked on passing a law in New York.
Right.
Which helped give better, basically improve transparency in the modeling industry so that models are paid out properly. And the Spotlight team in your neck of the woods, the Spotlight team from the Boston Globe did a whole piece on it. So, we worked on all of that. So like, I've been really committed to like using my law degree to still advocate for better protections for people that are in vulnerable situations, whether that's survivors of trafficking, whether it's young children, whether it's models, just people who aren't in positions to advocate for themselves. Like that's just been a real passion of mine.
That's awesome. Well, congrats on using, your knowledge and skill to, push forward and advocate for something that's so important.
Thank you.
Yeah. So do you have any other advice for the Lawyer Stories community that you want to share? Like, did we leave anything out?
Any other advice? This is going to sound a little trite, but it's just, I think as lawyers, like we're so many of my colleagues, and I see it all the time, we are so ingrained to just be such overachievers and type A and go-getters and pushed by achievement and accomplishment. And I think that we can forget sometimes that we're also people.
Yeah.
And I think it's something I'm learning more so now too. It's just, finding that balance is like so key of like, well, what makes you happy? Like, are you spending any time doing anything that makes you happy, or are you just chasing work?
Yeah.
And also just being there for the people in your life. Like, I think, taking that extra meeting or that extra client versus, oh, now I have time to go spend a few extra days, when I visit my friend instead of only being there for the weekend. Like, I think it's really important to prioritize your personal life and your personal relationships too, and figure out what makes sense for you for that. Because I think, like I said, we're just so ingrained into success, achieve, keep going more. You can always take on more clients and help more people. And I think we forget sometimes that it's like there's a little bit more to life sometimes, and slowing down to enjoy it is really important.
Yeah, I think that's a great reminder for everybody, especially this time of year, entering the holiday season. Be there for people. I like it. That's great. Shivani Honwad, what a pleasure to talk to you again and to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you so much, Benny. I really appreciate it.
Of course. And just stay right there. Is there anything else we're forgetting before we sign off here? Okay.
I don't think so.
Good. All right, stay there. And thanks for tuning in, everybody, wherever you are in the world today. Enjoy yourselves.